More than 60 clandestine flights into the sole Biafran airstrip.
Engines. Can you hear it coughing? Telephone message came from Biafra House to the tower to hold all flights. You know, he told us enemy aircraft in the area. The one that got hit. I said when this bomb fell.
Thanks very much for inviting me to come here. I thank Mike Goodkind for making the invitation and for setting this all up, and I have many people to thank, and the Friends of Nigeria. David Strain wrote a very good review of my book. I think as a result of that, a lot of people made some very interesting letters to the newsletter, and also contacted me personally with many stories of their own, and people that they knew, and wanted to know if I could, contact them. So there's been quite a bit of dialogue generated by the book, Far Away in the Sky, and today will be like a continuation of that kind of discussion, both during this presentation and later. So thanks to the Friends of Nigerian. Another reason, I'm glad to be here to talk about this, but another reason in particular is that 50 years ago this month, I flew to California to begin my Peace Corps training at UCLA in what became Group 9. And so this is a really important anniversary for me, and I'm very pleased to be here for it. I think all of us here share a background that's unique in all the world and in all time. We lived and worked in Nigeria in the dynamic period between its independence and the Civil War, when the country was working out its identity as a nation. Unlike tourists or business and government people living in their gated communities, or foreign correspondents living in Dakar, we lived for years deep in the culture of the various peoples of Nigeria. While providing Peace Corps service, we learned collectively a large body of knowledge and understanding that exists nowhere else. We developed strong feelings and ties with people of Nigeria that we met. And after all these years, we still call ourselves Friends of Nigeria. It's been 50 years, plus or minus a couple, since we arrived so brightly and enthusiastically at our Peace Corps training. What we subsequently accomplished in Nigeria happened so long ago that it can now be called history. That's a sobering thought. The major theme of this conference is to formulate a vision for the future. For my assignment today, I'm presenting an episode from the past of Biafran Airlift. But so how does that tie in? Well, we all need to look at our past Peace Corps volunteer experience and distill from it the meaning of what we did. What we contribute to the corpus of human knowledge will contain not only the events of that time, but the meaning we derive from it. A meaning that emerges after a lifetime of processing. And it is the meaning that will carry us into the future, guiding those who come after us. I was a Peace Corps teacher in eastern Nigeria, in the village of Amogubu near Omahia. I arrived January 1st, 1964, and I left in December 1966. As war was about to come. We heard talk of secession, we heard talk of war just as I was leaving then. Many of you stayed on into that period. But also, I re-upped for a third year. I was having the time of my life down there, and so I re-upped for a third year, and I got a home leave after the end of the second, and I came back to Nigeria on January 15th, 1966, as the first coup was happening. In fact, the pilot of our plane, as we approached Lagos, came on and said, "They're having a coup down here, and I don't know whether we can land or not." And and we have to go somewhere else. But they finally did let us land. But under all that that dome of gloom and doom and talk of war, in my own little place in Omaha, in my school, I was having a time of my life. And this is that's a home community grammar school in the village of Amogu. I taught English and literature and general science, and this would be a scene, I think, that's familiar to most of you here. These are some of my students. Some of the boys were on, senior boys were on work duty that day. I took this picture, and it turns out that many of them never made it through the war. The Enugu market might be familiar to some of you. Okay. And when I wrote the book, I wrote the first 2 chapters talking about my 3 years of Peace Corps experience in order to give some indication of what was to come, and in order to kind of answer the question, why would I go and do that, work on that airlift? And the reason is solely that I was a Peace Corps volunteer in that area beforehand. Otherwise, I would never have done it. But I found out in the course of writing these first 2 chapters that I could easily have written a whole book on just my Peace Corps experience, had I never even gone to Biafra later. But I threw in one more picture of the Continental Hotel in Omaha because that may have some meaning to some people as a watering hole. Jim Clark, he's not here. So anyway, moving on. This is a picture of some of us who were involved in the Biafran airlift. That's Larry Kurtz. He was stationed somewhere near Ablockley. Leo Anderson was an AGRD volunteer in the Omaha area. This is Barry Bianchi from the Midwest. The other fellow here, Bob Hall, was not a former Peace Corps volunteer, but he was an American pilot who liked to hang out with us on the island of Sao Tome. Leo and Barry have since passed away, and Bob was killed in an air crash. But the way we got there, I'd been already home from the Peace Corps for about a year and a half, and I got a letter from the Committee for Nigeria Biafra Relief. They were looking for volunteers to provide, relief services somewhere in the Nigeria Biafra area, and they sent an application. I sent it in. Eventually, they hooked me up with UNICEF, and all of us were with UNICEF, and sent me a ticket to New York. And when I went there, in their offices, while I was there for a while, I saw a big fat file of applications from many former Nigeria Peace Corps volunteers had also applied to do that. And so I asked them, why us? Why did we get selected instead of you? And they just said, you're immediately available. Had it been that we couldn't have made it, some of the rest of you would have been there instead. But anyway, so to get on with the story, what I'd like to do is, since you didn't get to go, I'll take you on a ride, using the fact that I made a lot of audio tapes, and I've recorded a great deal of this, and so I'm going to try to play them back for you now to give you a sense of what it was like to fly into Biafra.
The engines.
We're going to start engines.
You hear it coughing? Oh, they have a little electric motor here on the ground, which powers the unit, kicks the engine over. There it goes. Come on, kick. Go. It's not going. Go. Not yet. It's still on ground power. It's still on ground power. It's not going by itself. Go. Go. It's not catching. It's not catching. There it goes. There it goes. There comes a flame. The smoke. It's still not caught. Everybody's running over to look. Catch, baby, catch. You gotta remember, these are pretty old aircraft, a lot of them, and sometimes it takes time to get an engine hot. That's terrible. Oh, here. That thing is backfiring all over the ranch. Try, baby, try. Okay, you got it. Now try another one. Come on. Your propeller's turning very slowly, very slowly. There it goes. Oh, those engines sound bad!
Now you're going to get on the plane?
Getting on or off?
These are the planes that we flew. I took this picture off the one end of the runway as they were lining up to come. These are DC-6 planes, propeller planes, and very typical of the kind of planes that we flew in there. And basically, the church, this whole airlift was started by a group of churches. And it had nothing to do with a military airlift like the Berlin airlift of 20 years before in 1948. This was all done by churches and NGOs bringing food in. And they got a lot of these planes out of old airplane boneyards, like around Miami and Fort Lauderdale, because jet planes had just recently come in and put all these planes out of service. And so you could pick them up really cheap. The church were able to buy planes very cheaply. But, so a lot of these things needed maintenance, and there were problems and all that. There were a lot of problems to overcome before, you could... there were a lot of different organizations. There were Protestants, there were Catholics, there were all kinds of different nationalities, and everybody was squabbling among themselves, and there were problems between the relief people and the Biafrans. There were all kinds of things, and plus the fact that there were the MiGs were shooting down planes during the day. That they shot down a Red Cross plane, and so we only flew at night, and we flew without lights, and we flew without radar in the ground, and we landed on a strip of road over there. So all these things were extremely difficult to overcome, and so we're not going to get to go into Biafra right now. We'll have to do a few things on Sao Tome first before we actually get there. But starting those engines really epitomized how the airlift went. It had high points and low points, and it was difficult to do. These gentlemen were three of the movers and shakers on the island. Mr. Yeager represented the World Council of Churches, which is a worldwide Protestant organization. Father Anthony Byrne was head of Caritas International, a Catholic group, and Joe Galano was head of Catholic Relief Services in New York. And these three guys were very energetic in making sure that the airlift ran and where we had supplies coming in and all that. that particular plane in the background was a DC-7, one of the main ones that supported the airlift in the first several months of it. These planes were, they got them for $40,000 a piece, and they used to have been the premier airliners in the world before the jets came in. But the airlift started probably in about 1968, in August maybe. It was hard to say what the start was because, first of all, there were a lot of arms flights getting in. The gun runners were bringing arms in, but no food. Early in the war, there was food, plenty of food, but no guns, and so they started with the guns. And then some of the Catholic fathers began begging for rides on an arms plane to bring in some food. And gradually then it built up where the church was able to buy their own planes and have a pure relief effort going in. Okay. So we were stationed, those UNICEF volunteers were stationed on the island of Sao Tome. And this is how we got there. We flew from New York over to Amsterdam, down to Amsterdam. We stopped overnight in Tripoli. We were flying on one of those planes you just saw. And stopped in Cotonou. And from there we went to this island of Sao Tome right here, which is right on the equator. And it's about 300 miles off the coast of Gabon. And this other line was the line by the churches that I worked for was based on Sao Tome. The Red Cross was based in Fernando Po, which was right off the coast of Nigeria. And then the French Red Cross flew in planes from Libreville. And the air was full, the darkness was full of airplanes converging from all over the place. This was the familiar territory. This is the inside Biafra. Down there was Port Harcourt, Bugama, Opobo, and on up the main road, Aba, Umahia, Okigwe, and Nugu. And over here, Abakaliki, Afikpo, Ahafia, Arachuku, Kadekpenny. But along this Oweri Onitsha Road, in this circle here, is where we landed. There was Ihiala, Uli, Mbidi, and Alamama. And along this stretch of road is where we landed. It was almost due north of Sao Tome. It took about an hour and a half for our fastest planes to get there, and somewhat longer for the slower ones. Okay, so we were on Sao Tome, and we were seconded from UNICEF to an organization called Nord Church Aid, which consisted of some of the northern churches, particularly out of Denmark. And they're the ones who were running the whole airlift at this point. And on the island of Sao Tome, at the early stage of the airlift, there were a lot of supplies coming in by air and by ship. The harbor was full of ships. And they were taking those things off the ships and then just dumping them in buildings like this all around the town, designated them warehouses. But the whole early part was just a tremendous jumble. They would pile up sacks of food, cans of food. There would be milk powder, salt, stockfish, cans of beets, cans of bean soup, cans of mushroom soup, and peanut butter, and a lot of stuff that people around the world were donating. And they were all coming in and just went helter-skelter into these buildings. And when they were planning the manifest for each night as to what food to fly in, they really didn't know how much of what was where. And it was a real task to try to get the planes loaded. And so Pastor Mallerop, who was the head of Nord Church Aid, wanted the four of us volunteers, since we couldn't we were denied clearance to get into Biafra by the Biafran security once we got there. And so we had to wait on the island a while. And so Pastor Mallerock thought that what we should do is go in and organize those warehouses. And so we went and looked in the warehouses and saw this tremendous mess. In many places there was milk powder ankle deep laying all over the place. There was wet here. It was, you couldn't tell. It was a complete mess. We couldn't even tell, like, what was over in that corner. How would you ever know? And so we looked around and said, well, we didn't sign up for this. We want to go into Biafra. And so we went to the beach. This Sao Tome is an island, a volcanic island on the equator that I think is like unrivaled in beauty anywhere. I mean, when you go out and look at the beach out here in Asilomar, that's just a view. We went out there last night. It's just really beautiful, and with the moon out and all that. There were places like that all over this island, including one of our favorite places called the Bay of the Seven Waves. And but they were deserted. We could go there and play, and there was nobody around. Sometimes some kids would come by and talk to us, but it was a really great place. Well, Pastor Mallerock called a big meeting of all the important people on the island and in the airlift, and spoke about the necessity of organizing these warehouses and how critical it was to the delivering of food. And he said that anybody who in any way impedes the delivery of food and medicine to Biafra is a mass murderer of children. And look right at us. Well, having been Peace Corps, so volunteer, we didn't think that was one of our major missions, murdering children. But we realized that it was probably a really good idea that be done. And so, since we couldn't go into Biafra as soon as we wanted, we did that. So there were 6 of us to begin with. Jerry Davis and Tom Hebert were also UNICEF volunteers who were there early on, who eventually couldn't get into Biafra and got disgusted and went home. But we started working in the warehouses, and after a while we figured out how to make some sense out of it. There were 13 warehouses, later 14, and we designated each one for a separate commodity. Like all that milk would go over here, and all the salt would be over there, and the stockfish, we moved all that to way out of town, to the farthest one, because it was really stink, And then it took all those random cans and odds and ends of stuff, and we put them in Warehouse K, which we nicknamed Chaos. And it was food sent that was well meant by the people who sent it, but it was a logistics problem, because if we were flying in a plane load of that food, say 10-ton cargo load on that, there were 7 tons of it would be the can itself and the water in it, and only 3 tons of food. Plus, when it got over there, it would be difficult to distribute. If you were in a distribution center and you're giving out these things, everyone in line, who gets the peanut butter, who gets the beets, and would they fight about that, So it's much easier to send in, like one large quantity of the same quantity, and you give that out to people. And some of it was designated for relief purposes. Like one of the materials was what we called Formula 2, which was a composite of corn meal, soy meal, and milk powder. And it was, a very, very good basic nutrition, and easy to ship, easy to prepare. So we worked at that, and after a couple of weeks we got it all sorted out. We worked really hard, cleaning the warehouses. We helped unload ships in the harbor. We just threw bales of stockfish around, and and worked long hours at it. But eventually we got that under control, so that a couple of us, together with Portuguese and some Sao Tome natives, were able to do that work without our help. In the meantime, we still hadn't been given clearance to go into Biafra, and so Leo Anderson and I got jobs as help mechanics. We heard the other mechanics working on these old planes complain bitterly that they were way overworked, and so Leo and I said one night, well, we can turn a wrench. Or just tell us what to do. We'll take off the parts or do whatever. And, I'd never been an aircraft mechanic before. I had worked on my own car at home, but I'd never been anywhere close to this. I mean, I couldn't even change a tire on a plane. And if you think about that for a minute, how would you do that?
What's your jacket up?
The same way, you gotta jack it up. What do you use for the jack? So it was a really kind of a bold thing that we did to volunteer to do this, and it really hit me the next day when I showed up for work. And now what am I going to do? Why am I here? But I think part of it came from the Peace Corps experience, where we were stationed far from any kind of supports, and we had to do whatever was necessary to get things done. So you took on some tasks that you may never would have thought about in your life, and it was okay. We got to get it done. So this was one thing that was needed. We couldn't get into Biafra to do our main job, so Leo and I started working as mechanics. Another thing that happened on the island before we actually get a real ride into Biafra. There was an orphanage near the airport of San Antonio, which had a group of Biafran children there. When our planes went in and dropped the food off, sometimes we carried back some children who were in the last stages of starvation. They had to be evacuated. There was, that was the last chance. And so they were brought out, we brought them out to this orphanage that was run by some Catholic nuns there. And they were just like limp rags, and they couldn't speak, they couldn't move. But after a few weeks, I took this picture up there where these kids were about 4 to 6 weeks there, and they were already able to get up and walk around, run around, play like kids, sound like kids. I have a tape that I made then, and I'll play a part of it for you. You won't know, you hear all the words that they say or sing, but just listen to the spirit.
What is your name? Your name is Nicholas. What is that thing you have there? A gun? Where did you get it? You make them? What you going to do with that gun?
I want to take a fight.
Fight who? All right. Where are you from?
I'm from Umorishemi.
Where is that near? Is that near Omar here?
No.
No.
That was part of a larger segment of tape. They wouldn't stop singing songs. They just went on and on and on, and they went from one song to another, and I couldn't tell who was doing it, the leading or what, but they were just really enthusiastic. Sometime later, like last year, I happened to be in contact with a number of people, and one of them, named Austin Okibe, and he is a professor of ethnomusicology at the University of Boulder, University of Colorado at Boulder, and I gave him one of these tapes for the Low Heritage Institute, and so that they could record it. And he said that it was a really emotional thing for them to listen to, because one of the songs they were singing has been forgotten. Nobody knows the song, nobody remembers it, and this is the only recording of it ever. And so he said that it was hard to listen to because of the way the kids sounded, and knowing that they were the same age as these people are now who are hearing it. Okay. Now, having done this, we can go to Biafra. I also have another tape besides one that I made was made by Captain Tom Delahunt. He was an American pilot flying these Church DC-7s. On a tape, he does not identify himself other than it's just an American pilot, because this was, during wartime. And but I know who he was, because I flew with him many times, and I talked with him on the island a lot. And he was an American fighter pilot in World War II. He flew Corsairs off of carriers in the Pacific. And here he was at 52 doing this. Okay, I'm going to intersperse some of his tape with some of my tapes to kind of stitch together a sequence for you.
The voice you hear on this tape is that of an American pilot who has made more than 60 clandestine flights into the sole Biafran airstrip known as Annabelle. The runway consists of a widened section of highway. The federal Nigerian MiGs bomb and strafe the strip almost every day, so the flights take place during the hours of darkness. Originating from the islands of Sao Tome, Fernando Po, and from Libreville, these flights deliver hundreds of tons of desperately needed food and medical supplies to the starving people of Biafra. Every time a plane lands, 3,000 women and children are kept alive for one more month. Admittedly, there are a few flights of weapons to the military about once a week. The relief flights of non-military goods, however, comprise 16 to 25 flights per night, shortly after dark, and without benefit of navigation lights and radar control. 6 to 12 aircraft descend upon the lonely strip of Annabelle. The aircraft commanders make their own separation using a prearranged code via interplane radio. One at a time, the planes are brought to a landing by the Annabelle Tower, located several miles from the field. The runway lights are turned on only seconds before touchdown, and then switched off as soon as the plane is firmly on the ground. Taxiing and takeoffs are made without benefit of runway or aircraft landing lights if there is sufficient moonlight available. Once parked, the offloading is accomplished in complete silence and darkness. As if these conditions were not hazardous enough, the Nigerians have been sending DC-3s and DC-4 type aircraft over the airstrip and dropping bombs. Early in November, a bomb was dropped about 30 feet from a DC-7, killing 7 workers and seriously wounding a priest, Father McClade, as well as the aircraft commander and his co-pilot. The co-pilot was flown to the hospital on Fernando Po, while the captain, although badly wounded and his plane heavily damaged, managed to fly it 1.5 hours back to Sao Tome. This captain is now recovering in a Swedish hospital.
One of the jobs I had as a mechanic, and why they needed help so much, was that damaged plane was heavily damaged. You know, the 2 engines were out, and so Leo and I worked a long time on it. Thanks. Leo and I worked a long time on that plane. But okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, I made this tape on here February 1st, '69.
This is 5:10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, February 1st, and we're about to take off in DC-7 Bravo Charlie Whiskey for Biafra, and this could be a very interesting flight. We were about to take off earlier when we got a message from Biafra House, a telephone message came from Biafra House to the tower to hold all flights until the Biafran representative could get here with a special message. We were about to start engines. We did not. Stopped down all power and got out. We subsequently learned that, well, there's been we thought there's going to be some trouble in Biafra now. We think, here's the situation that last night, what we have heard is that there were some air raids on Port Harcourt and Enugu. By whom and with what we do not know or cannot say, and we figure that in retaliation for these raids, Nigeria is going to try something. It is said that for one reason or another, the bomber, the intruder, is no longer effective, or it's out of commission or whatever, so it will not be used tonight. However, the Nigerians are expected to take extreme measures to stop the flights.
One of these pieces of tape refer to the same aircraft, but I only have one picture of it, so I'm going to use the same picture a few times here. This is Delahunt again. You'll hear him talking to the tower in Sao Tome, asking for permission to take off, and the tower answering him.
Bravo Charlie Whiskey is ready for takeoff.
Whiskey Sao Tome, wind from 250 at 4 knots now, you're cleared for takeoff.
You heard the plane referred to as Bravo Charlie Whiskey. That was the designation for that particular aircraft, and it refers to the registration number or the tail number that's printed on it, in this case PCW. Now, again, Delahunt in the next tape, at this time he's coming into approach at Uli or Annabelle, the code name that night, and he's using the codes Yankee Yankee for the tower at Annabelle, for the Biafran ground controller. And the code name for Bravo Charlie Whiskey that night was Golf Victor Hotel. So you see him, you'll hear Delahunt contacting the tower, and the tower answering him, giving him, what the wings are and so on, permission to land.
Yankee, this is Golf Victor Hotel. How do you read? Golf Victor Hotel, Yankee, you know the stairs, aren't it? Roger, Golf Victor Hotel, this running twilight.
You can tell that I put together the book by researching, listening to these tapes, hours and hours and hours of them, and transcribing them, and putting the whole story together. So I had some very good, authentic documentation for doing that. Okay. Now we're going to go and try to land. This is my tape again.
One night, I was flying in on the first plane, a DC-6B. We crossed over the beacon. We came around on our approach. We're on our final, and we're on our short final. We're in landing configuration. We had gear down, landing lights on. The runway lights had been switched on. We were coming in when all of a sudden we got a wave off. They pulled the gear up, put power, killed the landing lights, and we moved out at a flat, fast climb. And we were going almost parallel to the runway. The runway lights hadn't even been turned off yet. We were about 2,000 feet. And I was looking out at the right side of the plane, out the windows, just looking, and I said to nobody in particular, I guess, watch for the bombs, watch for the bombs. And sure enough, there were two great bursts, simultaneously, side by side, great big orange fireballs. And then a few seconds later, another single one, closer to the runway. All three of these fell off one end of the runway, fairly close, the third one being quite close to the end of the runway, which is about where we would have been if we had landed and gone in about the time the bomb exploded.
This picture is one of our DC-7s that was bombed in Biafra. You see that the fuselage and the whole right side of the plane were just reduced to aluminum slag. A MiG shot it up caught it on the ground and shot it up. Biafran crash crews got out and doused the fire before it destroyed the left wing and the two engines there and all its fuel. And when Leo and I were working on the damaged plane on Sao Tome, we'd work out there all day, and then at nighttime we'd come in and take parts off of this plane to bring them back to get the other one flying again. But this is an example of what those bombs could do to a plane. And so,
one night I was in there last week. We were unloading the plane, the first shuttle that came in. Our pilot stayed in the aircraft by the front door while we were working inside the plane, and he listened. And he said, he told us enemy aircraft in the area. And some of the fellows indicated they wanted to go away. And I said, no, keep working, it's all right. And one fellow was working very hard by the door, throwing the sacks out, picked up what I said and told the other fellows, never mind, he said, the bombs are not for us, there is God. And we kept on working. The pilot would tell us when he heard the bombs falling, and I just yelled, lay down on the floor of the plane. And we do this, we lay down on the floor of the plane when the bombs went off, and it stopped rocking, got back up and started heaving sacks again. And they didn't exhibit, a great deal of fear or a tendency to run. I mean, I was scared. And they were scared too, but, they kept on working. It was good of the pilot to stay there, by the way, and tell us, because in the plane we can't hear when the bombs are falling. And I told him, I just told the workers it's best if you're in the plane to stay there, because if you're caught in the open running for a bunker, your chances are far less of being safe. So they did. We just lay down on the floor, and we continued working with the ACAT going on all around us and lighting up the inside of the plane. The guns are quite close to the field, especially we were down at the one end of the aircraft, the end of the airstrip, and round behind us and off to the side of us, there were gun positions. They were all firing. The tracers were lighting up the inside of the plane. We're now 4,000 feet over the field, descending. We're on our approach. No enemy action so far. We're at 1,000 feet on our final approach. Pilot is calling for runway lights. See runway lights straight ahead.
Stand up. Okay.
Lower the gear. See the runway.
120 BBB. 120.
Airspeed 120, gears down.
138, 650 feet.
600 feet.
40.
Airspeed 140.
2400 knots.
Mixture to rich.
Landing lights out.
Landing lights out. Landing lights on, full flaps. 350 feet. Airspeed 140 still. 134, 300 feet. 130. Yeah, it's right under us now. 128. We're down. Runway lights have gone out. We're taxiing. Engines are under reverse. Turned out the landing lights as well. Now we're getting by moonlight down this strip. All lights are out. Not a sign of enemy action yet. I see no anti-aircraft fire. Nothing.
Okay. If you don't learn these two, I'm going to kill you.
We're going to taxi to our parking area. Out for now.
That plane again. This one, back to Delahunt. He's in the bunker after landing, and after that, briefly, he's going to be in calling. You'll hear him calling for me to come and unload the plane.
We have landed here at the lonely airdrome at Uli. If my voice sounds funny, it's because I'm standing in a bunker, waiting to see if the bomber will come. Offloaded in complete silence and with no lights whatsoever. Possibly you can hear something though. Dave? Dave?
Okay. Now back to my tape of unloading. You'll notice how really frantic. It sounds. There's a commotion in there. The leader of the group of workers, for some reason I don't remember, threw off one of the guys. I don't know what was going on, but you hear it. There's just a frantic motion and everything moving. Everybody moving real fast. The urgency of getting the plane unlanded, of course, was to get it safely airborne and out of there again. But also, the faster we got the turnaround there, the more likely they could make another trip before daylight. And every trip that they managed to do, it was 10 tons or more of food. And these are DC-7s, if we really hustled, could make 3 trips in a single night. So each one of them bringing in 30 tons a night. Now this is unload. This is what I was recruited to do. This was the job.
Unloading the cargo. It's a cargo of stockfish and big bales. We're using 3 doors: the forward cockpit door, the main cabin door, and the rear emergency door. Come on! I said, go down, idiot! Come on, stop this! Stop it! You are trying to beat down them! You are trying to go give me where I'm giving you all this. Get down. Get down. All right, go to the sack down.
Inception is loading the lorry.
Come on. Hey, you two, back here. Come on, move forward and bring this stuff back. Bring it back to the door. All right, keep that stuff rolling. Yes, is anybody unloading from the front door?
No, they said we wouldn't.
All right, what are you doing wrong? So what? Station some men back here.
Do it off here.
All right.
Come on, lads. We want to be fast. Quick, come on.
Okay, can you station some more men back this way so they can slide them one to the other? All right?
Set it off.
This way. That's right. Okay, come on, this plane wants to make 3 trips. Quickly. Okay, push that plane up. Very good, okay, leave it. Now grab the other one and push it out here.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, that's one that's really going. Just kick it out.
On the screw side. Set it down the side there.
All right, slide it. Very good, it's working well.
That side is this wall. This side is this side.
Okay, very good. Keep going. Keep moving. The plane that came in earlier just took off. He's on his way back. He's going to try for 3 shuttles as well.
So were you able to plug the tape recorder in and just leave it run?
Yeah, I just turned it on and put it on the side there while I was working. Hold the flashlight. I picked up this interesting little piece too. I'll explain it after we listen to it.
Keep it moving. Well, and you put that fish in your pocket and eat it later, huh? Now throw it away. That fish. Put it down. Put it in your pocket.
So I caught one of the workers, taking a stockfish, and the implication, and I let it out. The implication is that the churches said that they insisted that they were feeding only the women and children, none of the men. And they were not feeding any of the soldiers who were defending their women and children. And they weren't giving anything at all to all these young Biafran soldiers who were helping us unload the plane. They were hungry. It's obviously hungry like everybody else was. And we were making them work that hard to get those planes unloaded. And they were given no compensation whatsoever. Every time a plane flew in, a pilot got $500. Back in '68, that was a lot of money. But those people got nothing. So when I saw the young man taking the fish, I said, just keep it. Okay, the next part of the tape was after all this was done, after all the first shuttle of planes had gone back to Sao Tome, and I was lying on the ground there between shuttles waiting for the next set of planes to come in. And I recorded this to tell you what that was like. This particular picture is, in fact, what that night looked like, February 1st, 1969, about 11 o'clock, as I went to a sky chart program on the internet, and I entered the latitude and longitude of Oli and gave it the date and time, and this is what the sky actually looked like as I was making this tape.
Lying alongside the strip at Uli on an air mattress, which I always bring along. It's about 11 o'clock at night. We're waiting for the second shuttle planes to come back. Should be along. First one should be along before long, maybe within 30 minutes. At these times, in between shuttles, well, can vary between an hour to 2 or 3 hours where we have nothing to do but just lie here and wait. Depends on the number of planes flying or how well they're spaced throughout the night. This is a very, very lovely night. There's a full moon out. It's very peaceful and quiet. You can hear the crickets. There's another plane overhead now. I think one of them is coming back. Unless it's a French Red Cross plane from Libreville. There was no enemy action of any kind that I know of, and that pleases me just as well. It's nice in here. It's very nice when there's no bombing and no threat of anything. This time we have in between shuttles we use various ways. We have time to eat a sandwich and drink a Pepsi or a cup of coffee. We rest, talk to Biafrans, and do a little horse trading. We trade things that we bring from Sao Tome that they need here, like cigarettes, razor blades, soap, cloth, things like that, in return for various numbers of items. Like I've gotten some drums, various musical instruments, and oranges. You can get an awful lot of fruits on Sao Tome, pineapples and bananas and pawpaw and mangoes and all sorts of tropical fruits, but for some reason you cannot get oranges. Well, we get some good oranges in here and take them back in these woven baskets, which are very nice. Like craft items, carvings, masks, things like that. Tonight I managed to obtain a piece of aquete cloth, which is cloth woven in Biafra, and like that, which is imported prints from outside, which are very scarce now in Biafra. But the people from aquete who used to weave this cloth, well, aquete long since has fallen to the enemy, but a lot of the people who know the art have moved up, and they're in the Abort sector now. Not all parts of the Abort sector are under the control of the enemy, but some are cleared, and these people are continuing their trade, so you can obtain some of that cloth without too much difficulty. At least we have some good contacts here, and get things like that. There's a plane coming in overhead now. It's coming in at this end of the runway, so it'll probably pass right about over my head. Or you might be able to hear it. I'll try to identify it as it goes over. It's a DC-7 back on its second shuttle. That was good time indeed. Those guys fly that plane like they think it's a jet. It is our fastest one. Oh, the breeze is blowing over me now from the landing. And pretty soon the wispies come over, the little turbulence from the wingtips and so on, and the propellers. They sound like little whirlwinds flying over my head now. I just can't pick it up. It's kind of pleasant. The plane, as it landed at this end of the strip, came in here. It means it will park down at the other end. And we won't be concerned with unloading. This is almost 2 miles away. Too much trouble for us to get down there. Can't walk it, and there's no transportation usually. So we stay at this end of the field. Most of our flights, the ones we're concerned with, do come in up at this end of the field.
That was a very pleasant night. I also had spent some other nights in hours in cold rain, and waiting for the planes to come in. That was a particularly fine night. Okay, this one here, this picture, looks like I was taking a picture of that shuttle truck, but what I really wanted to show was that plane behind it, a super constellation, but it's only a picture of the plane ahead. And that was from, it was a Canadian plane. I don't know if you can't quite see it up there, but what that says on the side of it was Canada Relief. In middle of January, toward the end of January, Canadians joined the relief effort that up to this time had mainly been carried out by Europeans. And so they brought this super constellation down, and its tail number, registration number, was NAJ. The story I have here is one night I was unloading that plane, and these are some of the things I had to say.
This cargo master and I managed to get the slide board out the door and started unloading the plane. Now, usually there's lorries, there's fatigue workers and people right there waiting for us to help, unload the plane. Now, at this time, there wasn't. They weren't there. I mean, they were, you can understand they weren't there because there were bombs falling. So they were in the bunkers, they were out off in the bush or something. So he and I continued unloading the plane ourselves. And we continued working for a while, and finally the slide board jammed up the bottom, and this other cargo master got down in the plane, said he would unjam it. Now, after that, I never saw him again, or that night I never saw him again, because he disappeared. About this time, Reverend Aiken, one of the WCC people in there, showed up, and he started helping me unload. And the two of us were doing it ourselves. And usually my job is just to, hold the light and holler. But that I was, as it is sometimes, I was unloading the aircraft physically myself. And Aiken showed up, and he and I were the only two there. And I heard again the of a bomb coming down. I was in the part, and as I heard it, I've been a lorry going or something like that, and at the first I heard of it, I could tell from inside the aircraft it's very hard to hear a bomb falling. If you're outside, you can hear it for a long way, but anyway, inside the aircraft, if you hear it at all, you know it's close. And I heard the damn thing, and I could tell by the rush of it, and the shriek of the whistle, and the giganticness of the whoosh, that it was close. And I dove. I did a great, beautiful header for the floor of the aircraft between the sacks of food. And as I was in mid-leap, I saw the flash out of one of the windows on the left side of the plane. As I hit the ground, I felt a concussion shake the aircraft. That was the blast that did damage the aircraft. Although I didn't know it at the time. Some bits hit it, either bits of shrapnel or stones kicked up by the blast or something or other. And I jumped up, and as soon as I felt the blast, I knew it was over. I jumped up and looked out the door, and I saw the plume of smoke going straight up into the air, and the sparks and everything else, and the pitter-patter of stones and things falling down around. Anyway, continued loading the aircraft. And for a long while, it was Reverend Aiken and myself, and then one of the marshallers, the guy with, these long flashlights that by arm signals and so on, with their flashlights to guide and direct an airplane to its parking area by various, sort of semaphore signals. His job was not unloading the aircraft, but there were nobody else, so he came back up. He came up into the plane, started unloading with us. And then, a long time later, after many bombs had fallen all around us, on one side or the other, a number of them caught me by surprise. I could, see them right outside the door, outside the cargo door, just off to the left. The first I knew of them was going the whoo, like this, and the great flash of light that goes up, and the shaking of the aircraft, and you keep on. Well, it's already gone. It's already gone off. So what do? You don't worry about it. Then you keep going. You don't interrupt your motion of. And I was working my balls off, man. I was really working like crazy because the idea is, to get that airplane unloaded so you get back in the air. Get back in the air and get off and get away from the bombs, save the aircraft, sort of thing. And we were joined eventually by about 4 fatigue workers Usual complement is something like 12 or 15 to unload the plane. Well, anyway, we sweated and sweated and sweated, and believe me, I was just an ocean of sweat, and every muscle in my body was aching. And, you know, I could hear those bombs coming down right and left all around the aircraft. A total of 8 fell while I was unloading the aircraft, and this is unusual. It usually drops just 6, you know, and, man, I've seen some crazy things that night, I'm telling you.
Well, what comes next is a continuation of that tape. It involves this bomb falling. It fell and landed right in the middle of the runway. And afterwards I went over and pulled this piece of scrap out of the hole. It was still hot. But what I'm going to play is what happened around that incident.
Well, Reverend Aiken, this guy said, was helping me unload the plane. And got down from our plane. And ran out when this last plane that was landing, the one that got hit. And I said, when this bomb fell. He was out at the end of the runway, and he grabbed the torches, the flashlights from the marshaller, and he was going to, you know, direct him what to do. And he was directing him up to this end, to a parking area near this end of the airstrip. But the captain of that plane, it was a Transavia plane, Captain Don Merriam, was an American, a very determined man who, you know, makes his own decisions, and he said, well, he didn't want to go there. He wanted to go back down the other end of the strip. But as he was taxiing along, just before he made his 180 to go back down to the other end of the strip, Aiken saw this flash and the bomb burst. And myself, I was at that time happily ensconced in a bunker, and opposite the open door, because there were so many hot, sweaty bodies in there, I couldn't get any deeper inside it. But anyway, I was down in the bowels of the earth, and in the sky, the patch of sky that I could see up through the stairs, you know, to the surface of the bunker, I saw the flash, and I heard the karoom, and the shaking of the bunker. But I got back up, and I saw that the Connie was about to take off, hadn't taken off. And what had happened is Aiken had, this Reverend Aiken had been directing this plane. He saw the flash, and it looked like to him, like, Jesus, God, it looked like it hit the runway, you know? And the plane turned around, did a 180, and headed on back down. And he thought that was strange, because he thought for sure there was a hole in the middle of that runway. And about this time, the Connie that we'd been unloading was about to take off. So he took off at a dead run right down the center of that runway toward the point where he thought the bomb had hit. He got there, and sure enough, he saw a crater, a big crater in the thing. And he looked around, and there was the Connie sitting at the end of the strip. You know, he got his engine started, he'd done his run-up, and he was about ready to take off. Aiken looked at him, and he looked at the hole, and he started running at a dead run right down the middle of the runway towards the Connie, waving his flashlight, waving his arms, you know, trying to get him to stop. You know, he's at a dead run. He's heading straight for this Connie, which was about, when he started his run, about 2,000 feet away. And much to his dismay, all of a sudden he heard the roar of engines, you know, under full takeoff power, and he saw the plane begin to roll and advance and come roaring at him. And you know what he did? No, you're wrong. He didn't run away. He ran straight. He kept running straight at that goddamn aircraft coming straight at him under full takeoff power, waving his arms like a son of a bitch. He was just flapping his arms up and down and waving his flashlight like a crazy man. And I guess Patterson finally saw him. He didn't know what the hell was going on, except there was a crazy man on the runway running straight toward him, waving his arms like a fool trying to take off or something. And, you know, he cut power, gave the order for reverse engines. They reversed the pitch, full power reverse, and he just stood on top of the brakes and got stopped before they hit Aiken, you know, and before they hit the hole. And in the meantime, he blown out a tire by standing on the brakes like that. Well, he didn't hit the hole.
I recorded that about 2 days after the incident, and and I was having a couple of beers while I was contemplating it, and you can hear some excesses in there. But when I wrote this in the book, I treated it with the reverence that it, in fact, it deserves. And that man, Reverend Aiken, William Aiken, was just an extraordinary person. He did a lot of things like that, complete self-sacrifice from the beginning to the end. And he said that at the end of the war, he came out looking as emaciated as many of the Biafrans did. And I've heard from many other returned volunteers who said similar things about some of the people that they worked with. Father McGlade and Father Finucane and many others that they knew who had stayed in there and worked the whole time. And they had a tremendous amount of admiration for them. And I dedicated the book partly to the Reverend Aiken. This was an American plane. Joint Church Aid was the group that Americans started to come to help. They sent over 4 of these former Air Force C-97s, big cargo planes. They carried a lot more than what we had been using. The interesting thing about these is that they were cargo versions of B-29s, so that the same planes that dropped the atomic bombs on Japan were now feeding hungry children in Biafra. Okay, this thing I left with you is an amazing document that has a tremendous amount of things to say about the Biafran airlift. It's full of facts, it's full of stories. I'm not going to go into too much tonight. It's just to say, for instance, the first line, you can tell that under company now, that's Can Air Relief Flight, NAJ, captained by Captain Patterson, left Sao Tome at 6:30 and landed about an hour and a half later. He was carrying 15 tons of rice. He was due for 3 shuttles that night, but you can see that he didn't make the 3rd shuttle because the bomber had caused a great deal of disruption. You'll see many other things, the kind of things that the airlift was carrying. In spite of the interruption by the bomber, they still delivered 170 tons of food that night.
I wrote Far Away in the Sky to help me understand, after nearly 50 years of reflection, what it means. What does it mean? Was the airlift worth it? What happened to all those starving children? Was it all worth it? Roger Riddell, in his book, Does Foreign Aid Really Work?, said the Biafran airlift was a huge failure. Now, this book is a textbook used at George Washington University among students who are preparing for a foreign service career. So this is the definitive statement that they're reading. Was Biafra a huge failure? Philip Gorovich, writing in the New Yorker, an article called The Alms Dealers, said, had it not been for the West Charity, the Nigerian Civil War surely would have ended much sooner. Against the lives that the airlifted aid saved must be weighed all those lives, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, that were lost to the extra year and a half of destruction. He also says that the humanitarians who delivered the aid should be held accountable for the extra lives lost. That would be me, mass murderer of children. There would also be you who donated, either directly or through your church collection plate, or any way you supported the effort. And there would also be the flight crews who died. A quick death. The proponents of that notion say that a quick death would have been more merciful, and that humanitarian aid causes humanitarian disasters. The central assumption that the war would have ended sooner without aid is merely a low probability presumption. It's not based on any evidence, not strong enough to construct a policy or philosophy. No one ever asked Biafran survivors what they thought. Aside from a weak premise, that definition of humanitarian aid is one-dimensional. It looks only from the donor side of what should be a complex interaction. In Far Away in the Sky, I observed giving and receiving become one composite event, bound up by dignity and respect on both sides. In all the articles I've seen on the subject, it is always Europeans who get to decide the worth of any aid. I've not seen in print any opposing view. The people of Biafra were not helpless primitives languishing in the jungle who depended on our mercy to exist. They were intelligent, resourceful, industrious, caring, humorous, deeply thoughtful, as their language suggests, and they still are. I wrote that in Far Away in the Sky. In 1970, Biafra dropped out of the news. They had lost the war. The hungry Biafran army collapsed and the war was over. News was over, but the story wasn't. What happened to the Biafran people? They grew up. They continued their education. They emigrated in search of opportunity to the United States, Britain, Canada, China, India, and elsewhere. They became doctors, scientists, educators, and enterprising business people. Their children are now going to college. The relief kept them alive. Their determination and intelligence carried them through the war and beyond. Writing the book led me to meet some of the survivors and learn what became of the starving Biafran children. On the night of January 22nd, 1969, I helped carry some children, near death, onto Bravo Charlie Whiskey for evacuation. Delirious, with unseeing eyes, this boy mumbled something which an adult translated for me. He said, "My father, why don't you speak to me? Don't you know me?" I sat with him on the floor of the plane all the way back to Sao Tome. His eyes were open, but he didn't move or make a sound. I took this picture a week later when he had begun to recover. This year, 34 years later, I learned that this boy has a name, probably Etin Odo Akpan, an ethic from Ikatapeni. Nnewi, a journalist researching his own history of the airlift, used the information from my book to find a list of the names of the children we evacuated that night. Although he hasn't confirmed it yet, someone told him that the boy lived, grew up, and is now a lawyer practicing in Nigeria. The ripples from the story go out far. Dr. Abbasi is a physician with an established practice in Chicago. His oldest daughter is now attending college. He was 10 years old during the war, and he watched many of his friends and family die slowly of starvation. He lived because of a daily ration of Formula 2 served by his mother as a yellow patty the size and shape of a hamburger. No matter how hungry the kids were, they had to go to school first. Then they were fed. Dr. Abbasi says he never wants to taste cornmeal again. Dr. Abbasi read my book and invited me to come to Chicago for a convention. There I met 10,000 Igbos, including the new generation. We all remember pictures like this. Now consider this picture. James Ihedibo, seen here in the New York Jets uniform, was ultimately traded to the Baltimore Ravens, where he earned a Super Bowl ring last year. He and his teammate, Kelechi Osemele, are grown children of parents who had been starving Biafran children in the 1960s.
And so, that generation survived because of what we did. But they took the chance that we gave them to live, and they turned it into a great deal of success all around the world. That's how I...
Thank you. Yay!
Because we flew at night and left Biafra before dawn, we never met the children we fed. Until now, almost 50 years later. So those children who were starving at the time of Biafra never met anyone who had flown on the airlift until they saw me in Chicago.
And, they wept, they shook my hand, they hugged me over and over. And, they were just wanting to express some gratitude. Even though, I wasn't one of the leaders, I wasn't a pilot, I wasn't a missionary, I just, did my work, volunteer work. But I was like a symbol to them, of, so they wanted to give their thanks, and so that's what they did. And they gave me an award.
Foreign brother.
One of the Namba means, foreign brother, by the Igbo League on behalf of the Biafran survivors. And so I said I would accept it on behalf of those who did work on the airlift and all those who cared. I would share their gratitude with all of you.
Were any of the pilots or crew killed during these airlifts?
Yeah, that Super Constellation, the Canadian plane in AJ, crashed on landing and all the crew were killed. One of those big C-97s crashed on landing, killed 5 crewmen. And one of our DC-7s, people I knew very well, crashed on landing. We lost a lot of air crew doing that.
How did they hook up the landing lights? Was that electrical or battery operated or what?
At first, all they had was kerosene lanterns.
Okay.
But they got better as they went along. The Biafrans had to do a tremendous amount of improvising in the war because they were completely cut off. But they had full electric landing lights, just like they could turn them on and off. They didn't have any radar or anything.
Fascinating.
Yeah. We can continue talking over the next couple of days.
Researching and writing the book took a long time. When it was published, I thought the story was finished, but it's not. It continues to unfold as other people's stories emerge as a result of this one. Everything we experienced 50 years ago is history. It's a sobering thought. A staggering thought is that when as many more years have elapsed, 100 years will have passed. What we taught and what we learned, what we gave and what we got, will slip back into the overall darkness of history unless we write the story and give it meaning. You have a story to tell. What you write will be incorporated into Google's corpus of human knowledge and into the Library of Congress. What's not written will be lost. Write it. Humanity will face grim challenges in the future. Your story will inspire people to help each other, to endure, and ultimately to thrive. One last thought. A favorite uncle died recently, and his children had to get rid of all the old junk that meant something only to him. A garage full of random pieces of things. I asked if I could have the old propeller. They gave it to me, and then I wrote a poem about it. The propeller has a history, obviously, from the dings and digs along its old oaken symmetry. But it has no story. A relic from a farm auction, no one knows what plane it flew, what thrills those dings drew. Without a story to hold it fast, its history slips away into the dimming past. The world is deep.